Hello, I am Jayanti and I work as the head of strategic enterprise accounts for Digitate based out of Chicago. So what I'm going to do today is talk about a few interesting things about ignio, typically covering deployment, integration, blueprint, pre-built knowledge and those kind of things. So what I'm going to start with is to give a view about how exactly ignio fits into your landscape. So ignio is a cognitive automation platform. So the whole purpose of ignio is to be able to perform work on behalf of a lot of your IT operations team in an intelligent fashion, thereby reducing the amount of human involvement and having better resiliency of systems and reducing and eliminating operational risk. So in order to be able to do that, ignio needs to know certain things about your landscape, and it uses certain things that it has already been trained to do, and it combines both of these to achieve its end goals. So I'm going to talk about that in a little bit of a brief manner. Now, when we talk about cognitive automation, we are really talking about two kinds of things that are coming into ignio. So you have deterministic events, as I call them, which we also call as service requests. And these could include requests for work such as provisioning users, provisioning capacity, restarting services, making configuration changes, and so on and so forth. Things that are requested and are of deterministic nature. The second kind of things that could potentially come into our landscape is not so deterministic or undeterministic events such as incidents, which are essentially outages and events that disrupt normal business operations by making IT unavailable. So we're going to talk about how ignio handles both of these, and in the process, what kind of things does it use. So in order to be able to work on service requests and incidents, ignio should be able to source that work. And hence, ignio needs to have strong bidirectional integration with the service management platform, which could be something like a ServiceNow or a Remedy in your environment. We accomplish this by using e-bonding adapters that allow us to understand the contents of a ticket as well as make changes to its status. This integration point is one of the key integration points that ignio will have with your landscape. And this is called work driver integration. The second kind of integration that is very necessary to be able to handle all of this work is what we call as data source integration. The data source integration allows ignio to develop an understanding and intelligence about your landscape. And this can come in the form of multiple types of data sources, which could be alerts, tickets, monitoring information, monitoring data. So there could be multiple monitoring tools which are managing both the physical and the virtual stack in your landscape. It could be logs, and it could be some definitive set of semi-structured information as well, all of which is used by ignio to develop the context awareness that is absolutely critical to handle this work. So we spoke about ignio having the ability to source work. Now that it has sourced work, it needs to have the ability to execute the work intelligently. So one of the elements is what it learns about your landscape from the data source integration. The second part is what is already built into ignio, which I'm going to talk about in a short while. We call it prebuilt capabilities. And the third bit, which is absolutely necessary, is ignio's ability to integrate with your target systems. Because in order to take actions without human involvement, we need to have the ability to connect to the target systems and take actions. For this, we have a set of integration called connection protocol adapters. Now these could be things like PowerShell, Secure Shell, specific APIs, which allows ignio to take action on the target systems as deemed necessary to resolve a service request or incident. Now this integration points with your landscape is very critical for the success of an ignio deployment. And this is where the benefits on productivity, resiliency, and better stability can be driven. Now, let's just focus a wee bit on the pre-built capabilities. And then I will kind of jump into a little bit on the internals of what ignio does. Pre-built capabilities are essentially skills, technology skills at various levels like L0, L1, L2 skills that are required to process the work that is coming into ignio, which could be deterministic like service requests or non-deterministic like incidents. Now, in order to do that, those skills are absolutely essential to do two things. One is to understand the state of the system and then to determine the right kind of action to take. These pre-built capabilities, or the automation content repository is another way to describe this, includes a set of operations for every technology type by skill level. Now, these could encompass web servers, databases, middleware, messaging, network, storage, and so on and so forth, which in your traditional operations are all different teams. So let's say, for example, if I have an incident which is a result of a problem in a database server and a problem in the storage, what would require multiple teams to investigate and resolve would be done by ignio using skills from both of these towers, combined it with the intelligence that is developed because of pulling in data about your landscape, and then defining what action needs to be done on the target system. So the whole schematic that you see here is what drives the engine of ignio. But in order to do that in a consistent and speedy fashion, ignio needs to have a real-time view of the enterprise, which is of course funded in large part by information coming in from these two sources. And that is called, the foundational engine is called the blueprint. And which leads me to the topic on blueprint. So when we talk about blueprint, ignio maintains a real-time and unified view of the enterprise, and we call it blueprint in the ignio language. Blueprint is a visualization or a model that shows how entities across business operations, applications, and the underlying infrastructures are connected to each other. So it has two kinds of information. The first kind of information is an inventory of these and their relationships. So inventory, relationship. What makes a blueprint different is that it also has dynamic information for each of these entities. Now what I mean by dynamic information is, so if we take the example of a storage box, there are certain metrics which define the operational status of a storage box, which could be read ops, write ops, read latency, write latency, so on and so forth, the service times and so on. So for each of these metrics on a storage box, ignio will have information on that metrics historical time series that allows ignio to build what we call normal behavior model. Or normal behavior characterization. And we do that for every single CI and metric combination in your landscape. So what it really does is, for at any given point in time, ignio could be potentially having a clear understanding of how certain metrics behave in relation to others in the entity model diagram. So this could be an application, this could be the underlying infrastructure components, and each of these infrastructure components have attributes or metrics which in turn have time series. So by having the ability to define normal behavior using dynamic thresholds, forecasts, having the ability to predict future events, understanding changes, trends and patterns for every entity across all of these attributes, ignio develops the key intelligence that is required to resolve this work that's coming in. And this is the first step in deploying ignio. In order to function cohesively in the landscape, we deploy ignio and start the process of building the blueprint. Prior to that, we set up these integration points to your landscape. And that concludes my initial session on insights about ignio.